Recently, I was spending some time on Zoom calls with a couple of clients who work in East Asia, which is a place that I lived for over 11 years. He was having a very difficult time integrating within the team that he was put in charge of and having a really hard time of it. He had done a tremendous amount of work to try to prepare himself for this assignment, but it just wasn't working out. And it led to a discussion about triangulation, which is one of the most important concepts that we talk about with our clients when it comes to intercultural adaptation and communication and just business culture in general. And we're going to talk about that now. My client in South America, who's now working in East Asia, did a tremendous amount of work to try to assimilate himself, to try to get himself on board with cultural custom, culture, the business culture. He tried to learn a little bit of the language, and he tried to really become knowledgeable about where he was going to go. And so it was surprising to him that he was still having difficulties with his team and difficulties with the individuals that were around him and the entire ecosystem. So he asked us to take a look at why he might be having those problems. So my client, his home country is somewhere in South America. We'll keep it vague for this example because South America has a tremendous amount of intercultural variance between the countries in general. But for this example, we'll keep it quite simple. My client is working in east part of Asia, which is its own very, very different business cultural center. So he lives in the eastern part of the country. So the first things that he noticed, there were differences in the how hierarchy worked. There were differences in the way that communication worked. There were differences in the way people take in information and the way people make decisions. And he did a tremendous amount of research on this and thought that he really had put together the right formula for success so that he could operate within these boundaries that had happened. However, what he began to notice was that the communication was not happening the way that it should. The communication was not in a fashion that was palatable to his team. And it created a lot of tension amongst the members of the team. He found himself getting angry because what he was saying was extremely clear in his own mind, but what was coming through to the team was not. Now, many times we confuse this for a language barrier issue, and it could be, depending on the language proficiency of the team. However, my client's team was pretty good in English, and so it led us to believe that there was more of an intercultural aspect here that was causing the issues. So I asked him to just take a moment and think about what are the parts of the intercultural mix that are really pulling on him. And he articulated what was going on between here and here. His upbringing, his business training, his schooling and education versus the same aspects from his host country individuals on his team. And then I asked him to think about what other cultures could possibly be pulling on him that lead him to a state of confusion or lack of ability to make a very fast decision. And we quickly came to the point where we realized that he has a North American boss. Now, we don't think a lot about this because the boss typically sends information, sends direction, helps you formulate strategy, but we don't think of it as something that really impacts us from a cultural standpoint, except that we had now have a situation where a South American individual trained and raised in South America is interacting with his host country team from East Asia, but through the directions of a North American boss. Now, you've suddenly introduced an entirely new aspect to it. The boss is not communicating too much to the host country, but my client was taking in information from the boss, putting it into a way that he felt best to communicate it, communicated to the host country team, and that team had to take the information from the standpoint of almost like the telephone game, because what the boss intended was then put through my client's field of vision and his filter of intercultural understanding, and then it was projected onto his host country. So I asked him, I said, are there any other areas that could possibly be pulling on you? And he said, well, I feel a little bit better about this because I kind of understand what you're saying, but I think there could be the possibility that I'm having impact from my company HQ. Company HQ located in Central Europe. And so therefore, intercultural differences between the way companies operate in Europe and his boss from North America filtered through my friend's filters from his experiences in South America and then projected onto the team to take as instruction. So it becomes really, really important to take into awareness these factors. Usually we think if we learn just a little bit of language, if we learn just a little bit of the culture of our host country, we'll be fine. But the reality is it's about you. It's about you taking information from your ecosystem and then being able to project information into your host country ecosystem or back into the surrounding cultures that surround you. Triangulation means that we are self-aware of the ecosystem around us, and we take a look at how this communication takes place. The communication from here to here has difficulties. The communication from here to here has difficulties, and you are located directly in the middle. So what are the 3 things that you can do to really insulate yourself, inoculate yourself from this type of situation? The first thing is self-awareness. You've got to be aware of the cultural aspects that are pulling on you. These forces are strong, and they pull and they twist and they make messaging difficult. They make listening difficult. Self-awareness is the key. Always ask yourself, do I really think that I'm getting the right message, and am I projecting the right message after you receive it? The second thing is curiosity. Now, I know that this is a fluffy word, but if you go into these situations with a sense of curiosity as opposed to a sense of urgency that it must get this done immediately and I must understand this completely now, you will be more successful. People who are curious about learning how these interactions take place and what are the differences and how they butt up against one another, they have a better chance of survival in these cases. The final thing that I would say is to get help. The time that I spent in Asia was 11 years. I went for 2 years, and it was extended to 11 years. And during that time, I had a total of 5 engagements with coaches. Now, that's not because I was failing or the coach was failing, but it was because of this sense of curiosity and self-awareness that developed over time, finally, that I was able to work with one coach to really build out my skill sets in one area and then transfer to another to build out my skill sets in a completely different area. Reaching out and getting help is one of the most important things you do. So those are the 3 things that I would say are most top of the list is self-awareness. Be aware of the cultural forces that are pulling on you. Be cognizant of these things. The second thing that I would say is a sense of curiosity. This takes you out of the position of being in the middle of the storm and actually puts you in a position of seeing what's going on as an observer. So curiosity is key. And finally, getting help. So here at Cranberry Leadership, we do intercultural training, we do intercultural coaching, and also group work. Reach out to us anytime and add to the conversation. This is really important stuff if you're going to be successful, continue to be successful, and to come home a hero. So thank you very much.